Since the beginning of time, man has yearned to take to the skies, to soar with the eagles. Men such as Da Vinci had the vision and desire to build flying machines. Through the years, many designs were tested. And most failed. But by the 20th century, man had mastered the basics and had embarked on a new and wondrous era in aviation. With these basics learned and proven, men with vision moved to form companies in the hopes of bringing aviation to the general public. One such man was William Boeing of Seattle, Washington. Boeing built his first airplane from a kit in 1915. Although it crashed shortly after completion, out of the rubble came a determination to design and build a better airplane. 6 months later, the B&W flying boat was produced, and Boeing was in the airplane manufacturing business. As an outgrowth of the plane building business, Boeing and pilot Eddie Hubbard had been flying the mail between Seattle and Victoria, British Columbia. In 1926, when the United States Post Office decided to allow private contractors to carry domestic mail, Boeing sprang into action. He directed that the Boeing Air Transport Company be formed to bid on the contract, and thus laid the cornerstone of United Airlines. 3 other airlines were chartered in 1926 for the purpose of flying the mail. Operating with varied levels of success and over vastly different routes, these airlines competed as best they could. But by 1930, Pacific Air Transport, Varney Airlines, and National Air Transport had been purchased by Boeing Air Transport. And on July 1st, 1931, United Airlines was organized as a management company for the 4 airlines. A new era in air service was launched. The focus of air travel began to change from primarily carrying mail to carrying passengers. New airliners and new technology came along at an astounding rate. New careers were created overnight. Prior to 1930, passengers on board the 10-seat Boeing 80 were either served by one of the pilots or were left to fend for themselves. In 1930, Ellen Church, an innovative young nurse with aspirations to fly, suggested that nurses be employed to serve meals and attend to the comfort and needs of the passengers. A young man named Steve Stimson, who later became known as the father of stewardess service, hired 8 women on a 3-month trial basis to work as cabin attendants, flying the San Francisco to Chicago portion of the main line. And what we now know as the flight attendant profession was born.
I was the first stewardess employed by Boeing, which later became part of United Airlines. My initial assignment was to recruit 7 other girls. I hired 3 in San Francisco and 4 in Chicago, all registered nurses, and we began flying in May. Here's an old picture showing us in our new uniforms. Very stylish at the time, shower cap berets. The plane was a tri-motor Boeing, enormous then, but a pygmy compared with today's jets. It carried 14 passengers, as I recall, and cruised at about 125 miles an hour. Being a stewardess was rather rugged at the beginning. There were times when some of the girls even helped to refuel the plane. Now, I remember standing out on the wings once or twice, pressing some gadget or other while the co-pilot started the engines.
Young women interested in the job in the early years had to be single, no more than 25 years old, stand 5 feet 4 inches or less, weigh 115 pounds or less, and possess a nursing degree. Starting salary was $125 a month for 100 hours of flying. As the size and design of aircraft grew and changed, so did the role of the stewardesses. More and more young women accepted the challenge of a career above the ground. By 1940, the airline industry was thriving and growing, but halfway around the world, the rumblings of war could be heard. As World War II exploded in the Pacific and our country was drawn into the conflict, United provided much-needed support to the cause. Under contract from the federal government, United crews shuttled men and munitions around the globe. United's overhaul base at Cheyenne, Wyoming, was transformed almost overnight into a modification center for Air Force bombers. United trained pilots, technicians, and mechanics helped to fuel the war machine. And since they were nurses, many stewardesses left the company to join the Army Medical Corps, forcing United to drop the requirement of a nursing degree for prospective stewardesses. As the war drew to a close, United redirected its energies back to commercial aviation with a more highly skilled and motivated workforce than ever before. As the 1950s began, United Airlines was completing 25 years of air service and was poised for a new age in travel. In 1953, United and RCA began developing airborne radar. New planes and new routes were added to serve the ever-growing public demand. Red carpet service, which included rolling out plush red carpets for passenger boarding, was inaugurated, and pilot training was becoming much more sophisticated with the installation of 4 electronic flight simulators at the Flight Training Center. Non-stop coast-to-coast air travel began, and stewardesses had a job that was a quarter-century old. By 1959, the jet age was underway, and United took delivery of one of the first commercial jet airplanes, the Douglas DC-8. A tent show called Jetorama began a cross-country tour to promote jet travel.
Friends, I would like for you to meet the general manager for Jetorama on behalf of United Airlines, Mr. R.L. Robbie Mangold. Robbie?
Red, nice to have you.
Nice of you to let us come. Could we look around?
Well, wouldn't you please?
All right. Come on in. We'll show you what's going to take place at Jetorama. Now, when I walk up to the counter at United Airlines, what do I do?
Well, first of all, if you'd like to go on the 21st of October, we will just make that reservation for you. And Mr. Rowe, how many will be in your party?
Well, it's such a thrill, I've decided maybe I'll just go alone.
Go alone. And, of course, you want first-class service?
Oh, I want to go first cabin, yes.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Now, let's see what we might have available. And our mainliner 816 is certainly available on the 21st of October. And your reservation's confirmed.
This is Maureen Walker.
Maureen Walker. Well, you have to be a walker. Because I'll tell you, we have a big airplane here. What is the seating capacity, Maureen, of this airplane?
52 in the first class section and 53 in the custom
52,
coach.
53. Now, you've hit my arithmetic. 100 and 105.
plus-
And a crew of how many?
A crew of 4 stewardesses and then your flight personnel up front.
Maureen, show me
Well, why
where...
don't you sit down in this seat right here and I'll demonstrate some of our features.
Would you do that for me?
Push this little button here.
Oh.
Lean back.
In 1961, United acquired Capital Airlines and became the world's largest air carrier. Capital's employees and aircraft complemented those of United, and an even stronger airline was created. Also in 1961, United's Instamatic reservation system went into service. That same year, the airline opened a $2 million training center and executive office complex in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. This impressive facility centralized the company's top management and provided state-of-the-art training facilities. For stewardesses, this was a far cry from the very early years when their training consisted solely of on-the-job experience. Again, new airplanes and technology marked this era. The Boeing 727, which is today still a workhorse of United's fleet, was introduced in 1964. And as television became a greater part of American life, United moved to advertise on the medium with dramatic results. In 1965, it launched one of the most effective and memorable corporate slogans.
Fly the friendly skies of United.
With humor and emotion, United told its story.
Just a week?
Be back before you know it.
Take me along if you love me. Take me along if you love me. Take me along with
I love you, little cutie, but the office is my duty.
my heart will rise. Sweet and glorious, high above a throng. If you will take me along with you.
All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go.
Graduation day at United Stewardess College.
I hate to wake you up to say goodbye, but the dawn is breaking, it's early morning.
It's a happy day for the girls and their parents.
I'm so excited, just can't wait to fly. So kiss me and smile for me.
Above all, it's a day when the friendly skies become even friendlier.
I'm leaving on a jet plane, and soon I will be back again. Fly the friendly skies of United.
Through creative and sometimes touching ads, the friendly skies became one of the most recognized and emphatic ways to describe the image of United. As the age of Aquarius drew to a close, bigger changes were on the way for the company. With the arrival of the 747 and DC-10 aircraft, capacity and service reached new levels. Stewardesses went from serving fewer than 100 people on a flight to attending to over 300. On a more personal level, United at this time rescinded the rule that stewardesses could not marry or have children, a rule that had been in effect for 39 years. Also, in response to the times and the success of the Hawaiian Steward program, United began hiring men in 1972 to perform in-flight duties on domestic routes as well. As a result, the name of the profession was changed to the all-inclusive term flight attendant. With improvements in salary and working conditions brought about through collective bargaining, the stewardess job had evolved by the 1970s into the flight attendant profession. The flight attendant profile changed from that of a young single woman who remained on the job approximately 18 months to a more mature, business-oriented individual with a full-time career in mind. The 70s were a tumultuous time for the airline industry. High costs, a weak economy, and government regulations all conspired against United. But in 1978, with the prompting of some of the airline giants, the government agreed to deregulate the industry. The transition to deregulation caused an upheaval in the industry as the 70s turned into the 80s.
Well, we got a traffic jam. Yeah, let me look. I think the jumbo's coming out now.
Going off the right, 32.
Okay, he's going off the right. Just wait right there, United 447. That company jumbo is coming out. United 929. After the company jumbo comes out, the company from your right goes in, straight in. 789, you do the same. Kilo 7, taxi real slow. They got 110 and one tri-jet out of there. And what I want you to do is make a right turn, go to the inner, and just hold short.
New airlines sprang up almost overnight, and some faded away just as quickly. The 80s were to become the era of mergers and acquisitions, with United in the thick of the fray. In 1983, United began service between the Pacific Northwest and the Orient. But it wasn't until 1986 that United became a true international carrier with its purchase of Pan American's Pacific routes. This strategic purchase positioned United as a major player in the Pacific, one of the most lucrative markets in the world. This expansion established the company's prestige and status as a world-class air carrier. To support this new operation, United implemented the position of regional flight attendant. This multicultural group continues to contribute to the superior service needed for the company's success in this very competitive part of the world. In the 90s, as United set its sights on the next century, the friendly skies covered more of the globe than ever before. Beginning with a modest 2 flights a day from the United States to Frankfurt, Germany, European service has grown to include gateway operations such as London and Paris, with additional service to the major business centers on the continent. The old world charm of these historic cities highlighted United's long-awaited entry into the European community. Meanwhile, half a world away, flights to South America were inaugurated, completing a network that merges the culture of the gauchos to the ideas of the Renaissance. United has always been a leader. Today, the Pilot Training Center in Denver, the largest commercial training facility in the world, trains flight crews from foreign and U.S. carriers, as well as government and private industry. The maintenance operation centers in San Francisco and Indianapolis set the industry standard for excellence in maintenance. And United's flight attendant workforce is one of the most highly qualified in the industry, with flight attendants having to successfully complete an intensive training program focusing on safety and customer service before earning their wings. We at United invite everyone to sample the service and dedication built on years of experience. From a biplane with 10 passengers to a 747 with over 400, from Bangor, Maine to Bangkok, Thailand, the spirit of United soars. From stewardesses to flight attendants, people with vision and determination formed new careers. From open cockpits to all electronic flying, expanding technology has conquered new horizons. United's history is one that every employee can be proud of and that others envy. And through it all, the spirit of the founders and those who followed shines brightly, lighting the way for ever-expanding opportunities and adventures. And so, we invite those of like mind and temperament to join us in the quest to fly, the thrill of aviation. Come fly the airline that's uniting the world. Come fly the friendly skies.